Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the She.Must.Knit podcast. My name is Erin, and thank you so much for spending some of your time with me today. How have you guys been? I hope you had a great week. I've had a really busy week. I've mentioned before that I'm preparing for the Kawartha Fiber Show this Saturday, and I have been working every single day. I have not had my regular knitting time. Obviously, I have got some knitting done, but there have been some nights I have not knit, and I have been a grumpy Erin this week because I need my nightly knitting. But yeah, other than that, I've been doing my show prep, and after this Saturday, I will be able to get back to my regular knitting, and I cannot wait. There are so many projects that I've been sharing with you over the past few weeks that I've just been dying to get back to. So yes, this coming week, I'm going to be able to do that, and I'm so excited. But what do I have for you this week? Obviously, I have a finished garment that I'm going to be talking about in a little bit of detail. But then we're going to have a chat. We are going to have a little talk. Last week in the comments, I had a question about garment knitting and picking flattering patterns. And it got me thinking, and I thought it would be a really interesting thing to have a little discussion about because, you know, especially with Ravelry and just all the indie designers out there and just the flood of patterns that we get all the time, it's sometimes difficult to narrow down those patterns that are going to work for you. So I thought we'd have a little talk. But first, let's go into the finished object that I have. I'm just going to have a quick sip of my drink. Technically, it is tea, but it is iced tea today. So I'm just going to have a quick sip. In the summer, I really like doing iced tea where I just take, you know, those big kind of tea filters that you can get, those biodegradable tea filters. I fill it up with my favorite summer tea, pop it in some water, put it in the fridge, and boom, iced tea. So that's what we have today. But yeah, so let's get into my finished object. Obviously, I am wearing it. I finished my Mae. I finished it, I think I finished it last night. I wasn't sure if I was going to finish it for this episode, but if nothing else, if I accomplished nothing else this week, I was going to finish this sweater. And I'm pretty happy with it. I have made some modifications that I've talked about in previous episodes. Number one being that I did fingering yarn held double instead of a worsted weight. I moved down to a smaller needle. The pattern calls for an 8mm needle for the body of the sweater, and I used a 6.5, and so I did the biggest size instead of the second largest size, which I probably normally would have done. I also modified the sleeve edging. You can see here, instead of in the pattern originally, you would just knit straight up, and then after you were done, you would pick up along this edge and knit out a little bit of rib. But because I did a faded version, that's the other modification I did. I did a faded version. I will pop in a full-length picture of me wearing it. I had Avery go outside with me after school today and take some pictures, and so I will pop in one of those so you can see the full length. But because I did a faded version, I didn't know if I picked up the sleeves where that color that I had left, if it would fall on, you know, a darker area or whatnot. So what I did is I did a little modification where I used a technique from another pattern, an Andy Satterlund pattern, where she had you do like a sleeve edging. It's like a slip and knit kind of technique to give you an edging as you go. And so I did that on the sleeves, and I quite like it. The other thing I did was the pattern is originally knit to have a V-neck both in the front and the back, but in reading other project pages and in following, I did this as part of a KAL where everybody was making the same garment, and that sometimes that can really benefit you because there was a lot of people making notes on how their garment was fitting them, and a lot of them said because the V in the back made it very big, it was falling off their shoulders. So what some people were doing was instead of doing the V at the back, they just knit straight up and then across the back so that it was just a straight back. And I basically did that except about 6 rows before I was going to reach the height of my fronts. I cast off some stitches in the middle and then kind of decreased and sloped up to the shoulder. So there's a little bit of a scoop at the back. It doesn't go straight up. But other than that, Yeah, I'm pretty happy. Now, we'll go into this when I get into the garment discussion. Am I happy with the finished product? I am. I'm very much a process knitter versus a product knitter, and I very much enjoyed this process. I really enjoyed knitting the sweater. I loved doing the fading. I think it works really well with this pattern. I would do it again with this pattern, but there are certain things. So in reading the pattern pages, so like the project pages that other people have done of this same garment, a lot of people mentioned that it is quite oversized. And if you look at the schematic, it is quite oversized. And I did a smaller needle so I wouldn't get as thick or as loose of fabric, but I actually think that I could have done the smaller needle and still done the second smallest size, or the second largest size, because the top is quite roomy on me. And I know it's supposed to be an oversized garment, but for me personally, I feel like it's a little too oversized for my top. My upper half is very much narrower than my bottom half. And I do really like how it fits my bottom half. I like the length of it. I think it works with my leggings. But I feel it's very, very roomy up here. So I would absolutely do this pattern again, but I would do the second largest size. I would still use the smaller needles, and I would even consider maybe doing some decreases, like start off the bottom with that larger size, but then as I go up the body, decrease so that I'm doing maybe even the third largest size for the upper body, just so that I don't have as much fabric. Will I wear it? I think I will. I do feel pretty comfortable in it. And when we get to our little garment chat, I'm going to be talking about some of my past projects. And I think this sweater has a better chance of being worn than a lot of those. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with it. The yarns, I can't really go through all the yarns because a lot of them I had pulled from stash. So this is entirely a stash project, which I love because I'm trying to work from stash this year. But there was I used 5 fingering weight skeins for my stash, and 3 of those were lighter skeins that the colors just weren't working for me anymore, and so I over dyed them to work with some of the other skeins I had to create the fade. So the 2 that I can show you, I used one from Northbound Knitting in the color Uproar, and it's one of the brighter purples in the middle area. I might actually also throw in a picture of it just flat on the ground and kind of map out the color changes, because what I did is I started with 2 strands of the first color and then moved to 1 strand of the first color, 1 strand of the second color, then 2 strands of the second color, a strand of the second color, a strand of the third color, 2 strands of the third color, and so on to get the fading effect. And then the other one I have was the second from the top. So the very last color that's up here was one that I over dyed. And then the second one, I think it was right in about here, you can see those darker speckles. That was from a skein of Hopkins Fiber Studio. So those are the 2 yarns that I used as is, and then the other 3 I over dyed to make work. And I have to say that that can be a really, really helpful technique if you're trying to use your stash, is just learning some basic dyeing skills, because you can take a skein, I mean, yarn is yarn, right? So if you need a worsted weight skein and you have 10 of them in your stash, but none of them are quite what you want for a specific project, it's very possible that you could make one of those skeins work for what you want with just a little bit of over dyeing or color changing. So I quite like doing that, just to make use of what I have and not have to go out and buy for a specific project. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this specific sweater. If you have any questions, if I missed anything, I have my project page, and I usually do detailed notes. If I have, if I go beyond what just the basics of the pattern was, I usually have detailed notes, so that's there. Or you can just post a comment below and I will be happy to answer it. So yeah, let's have a little chat, shall we? And also anything that I mention about garments in the, next little section here. I would love to know your opinions on it, or if you're a garment knitter, like how do you choose your garments? Because there's a lot of people I see who make garments all the time, and it seems like every pattern they pick and everything they make is beautiful and looks beautiful on them, and they just have this gorgeous wardrobe of hand knit items. And I can say with absolute like conviction, that is not me. I have had a struggle with picking garments and making garments since I got back into knitting. So I had talked about in my introduction video how when I started working at a craft store after university is when I really got back into knitting. And within that first year of getting back into it, I started trying garments. And you know, you see these patterns and you see these pictures of these you know, knitwear models wearing this sweater, and you're like, oh, that's such a beautiful sweater. Like, I think a lot of it can be very emotional, where you see this pattern and you're like, I want that look, right? If I make that sweater, I will have that look. Not necessarily that you will look like that, but you will have that look. And because I've always been a process knitter, a lot of the times I think I'd see a pattern and I would just be like, oh, that looks like a really interesting pattern. I just want to make that pattern. So I looked back in my Ravelry page. I went down to the depths. I have over 500 projects at this point. I went to the depths of the bottom of that page to see when I started making garments, and kind of my progression of making garments, because it's been a while since I've gotten back, or yeah, I've only recently gotten back into garment knitting. So I went through my project page, and the very first garment that I made for myself was in 2007, and it was a horrendous cotton tank top. I don't think I ever wore it. I think it's like, you know how Ravelry you can have you can rate things by happiness. It is an UGG. It didn't work. It didn't fit. It didn't look good. Looking at it now, the shape is completely wrong for me, but that was my first project. And then I kind of looked through the other projects that I had that were garments, and I counted how many garments did I make. So my first garment was that horrendous tank top in 2007. And then between 2007 and 2011, I made 18 garments. 18. And if you were to ask me now, did I ever wear any of them? No. I can honestly say I never wore any of them. I'm going to make a little collage of them. And if you want to feel better about the garments that you've made for yourself, you can have a look at this little collage of my 18 garments that I have never, ever, ever, ever worn. A lot of them I actually think I donated. It was a case of just picking a pattern and just not really thinking about how it was going to fit into my life, into my wardrobe, into, you know, my style. And I think over time, that's what's gotten a little better for me, is that I'm thinking a little bit more about the patterns. So 2007 to 2011, I made 18 garments. 2011, Avery was born, and I did not make another garment for years, because all my garment mojo, anytime I wanted to make garments, because I do like making them, I made her. I didn't even bother counting how many I've made for Avery, because I have made probably over 100. I don't know. I have made her so many garments. So yeah, from 2011, I just started making baby things, and then toddler things, and then little kid things. And in 2014, another garment for myself popped up, and I think it was kind of like a test knit. It was the designer, I think the design had previously been in a magazine, and she was re-releasing it, and so she just wanted it worked through again. Looking at it, it's not too bad on me, but I never wore it, and it might have been the material, because it was 100% acrylic, and I think it didn't have it. Also the color, because we'll get back to this in. Now I have three questions that I ask myself when I'm looking at a garment pattern, but I think this one kind of missed a lot of those questions. So even though when I look at the picture of me wearing it, I'm like, oh, that doesn't look too bad. I don't think it was a good choice. So I never wore that. I think that got donated too. So that was 2014, and then the next pattern, or the next garment I made myself, was last year, 2017, I made the ingenue. And that is probably the closest I've come to making something that I will actually wear. I think I've worn it a few times since making it, and considering I never wore anything else that I'd made, that is a big improvement. And so that was last year, and then the May here is the first garment since last year that I've made for myself. So there's been a bit of a journey, and it has not always been a successful journey. So I think if you struggle with that, or if you feel you struggle with that, you are not alone. So now with garment knitting, I've come to a place where I try to, we'll get to this too, because this week this was challenged. I try and put a little more thought into picking my patterns. So I think with knitting patterns, it can be very emotional sometimes. So again, like you see this pattern, you see this, you know, this beautiful setup that they have, this backdrop and the knitwear model and, you know, the outfit, and you can get sucked in very easily saying, oh, that's beautiful, I want that, right? And then also with just the growth in the knitting community and all the knit-alongs and all the podcasts, and you see all this inspiration everywhere, you can get sucked into that too, because all of a sudden everybody is making a specific pattern, and you're like, I want to be part of this, I want to make that too, right? So again, not always thinking, is this going to fit into my wardrobe and in my lifestyle? So I have come up with 3 questions that I ask myself when considering a knitting pattern, because it's very time involving. It's very, like, if you have to buy the yarn, it's quite the financial investment. And so in trying to make sure what I'm going to make is going to be something that gets used, I've tried to come up with 3 questions. And the first question I ask myself is, if I saw this as a finished garment in a store, let's say my favorite store that I go into and I can always find things that I love, if I went into the store and saw this hanging there or on a mannequin, is it something that I would pick out and try on? Because I find for myself, shopping at a ready-made store, it's more objective for me. I find it very easy to go into a store and look at shapes and look at colors and look at the pieces for just what they are and will they work with other pieces that I have. And it's either yes or no, or it's a maybe, you try it on, nope, this isn't going to work for me, and then you put it back. So if I saw this knitwear pattern in a store, is it something that I would be attracted to? Would I try it on? You know, would I buy it? And if the answer is no, then that's one thing. Now, just because the answer is no doesn't mean that it's a write-off, but it's something to consider. And the second question I ask myself is, does this pattern have a flattering shape? And I think if you look at the wardrobe you have, so your ready-made wardrobe, and you think of the pieces that you wear on a regular basis that you feel good in and that you feel flatter you, if you look at those shapes, often there's a common thread, right? So most of those garments will have similar elements. And for myself, I know what elements I really like and that work for me. And one is having more of a V-neck. Another one is 3/4 length sleeves. I don't like long sleeves. I like tunic lengths. I like asymmetrical shaping and waist details. Those are things that I know if a garment has those elements, it tends to be very flattering on me. So if I'm looking at a knitting pattern, does it have those elements that I know work for me? And then the third question, can I see this piece fitting into my wardrobe? So this could have to do with the shape, but it also could have to do with the yarn that you're considering and the colors. Because if you make this beautiful sweater, but you have nothing to wear it with, it's going to sit in your closet, right? Like I need to know that, okay, if I make this sweater, I have things I can wear it with. I have pieces that I can pull together and create an outfit and use it. So considering, let's use the May sweater as an example. So if I saw this in a store, would I at least try it on? Just to know, you know, Mr. T is right here on the table, so he is getting curious in my face, so he's being very distracting. Anyway, So if I saw this hanging up in my favorite store, would I at least try it on? And I think I would. I do like the shape, the shape of this sweater with kind of like the cap sleeves and the tunic length and the V-neck. Absolutely, I would try it on if I saw it in the store. Would it be flattering? Yes. In theory, this kind of shape tends to be very flattering on me. And then see, will it work into my wardrobe? So when I was planning the yarns for this, they're mostly grays with bits of purple. And I have a few pair of gray leggings that I love to wear, and I knew absolutely that this would look good with those gray leggings. And so yes, I was like, I can picture outfits that I would wear with this. And so I went ahead with this garment. So yeah, so bringing it back to testing this, this week I was listening to the Just One More Row audio podcast. I don't do a lot of audio podcasts, but I do like theirs, and I do like it when I'm doing a lot of sewing because it's not distracting like visual podcasts, because I'm always like, ooh, what are they doing? Ooh, what are they showing? So audio ones work really well when I'm sewing because I can just listen and just concentrate on the work that I need to do. So I was listening to their most recent episode this week, and Dana was talking about how she was planning on making the Entrechat. So there's a kid's version, which I have made a bazillion times, and then there's an adult version, and she was planning on making the adult version. So bringing this back to how knitting patterns can sometimes be more emotional than just like objective, I was listening to her talk about how she was going to make this Entrechat, this adult version, and how the designer, Lisa Chemery, is having she had one last year, so this would be the second annual Entrechat KAL. So everybody just makes this pattern. And at first I was like, oh, I can whip up a baby one. Maybe I'll make a new one for Avery. Then I can participate in the KAL. Going back to just wanting to do what other people are doing and to participate. And I was like, maybe I can do one for Avery. And then she was talking about how she was going to be making herself one to go with a dress that she had. And I was like, you know what? I could probably make the adult one. I have yarn that I could make the adult one with. And it was actually the yarn that I had originally planned last year I bought at the Frolic to make the Mae. And then I ended up doing it with this yarn. And so it's right, I have it right here. Isn't this pretty? So I had originally bought this to make the Mae, and then I didn't. And so I had this yarn, and it's not quite enough for like a full sweater, but the Entrechat is more just like kind of a little cropped shrug. And I was like, I'd have plenty of yarn. I was like, okay, I'm going to make this adult version, and I'm going to participate in this KAL, and it's going to be so much fun, and I'm going to be able to use this yarn, and this is going to be awesome. And then I had to stop myself because it was like, Erin, you just had this discussion with yourself about garment knitting and like, choosing the right thing and choosing the right pattern, right? And making these questions, right? So thinking about the Entrechat pattern, I asked my questions. I was like, if I saw this in a store, would I buy it? Would I try it on? No, I wouldn't. I don't wear shrugs. I don't wear cropped patterns. It's just not something that works for me. And that goes into number 2. Is it flattering? I don't find cropped things are flattering on me. I don't think I have anything in my wardrobe that is shorter. No, that's a lie. I have one thing that I bought to wear with like a formal dress just to kind of cover my sleeves or cover my arms, and it is more cropped. But I never wear that. It's designated for that kind of dressier dress. So no, I have nothing in my wardrobe that's cropped. And then 3, would it fit into my wardrobe? I had to think, and I'm like, you know what? Okay, so back to the yarn. If I made it in this yarn, I was like, okay, yes, I do have a summer dress that has this color in it that I could wear it with. But would I? Probably not, because if it's hot enough to wear that summer dress, I probably don't need like a sweater, even if it's short sleeve and cropped. I probably don't need that over top. I run hot. I probably don't need that extra layer. And then I was like, you know what? I do have some leggings that have that kind of blue in it that I have trouble pairing with things because I don't have anything in that color. I could wear that with it. Okay, yes, true, but I could also make something else with this yarn that might be a better fit for my wardrobe and more flattering that would also go with those leggings. So in kind of stopping myself and just reeling the emotional, yeah, I want to do everything that everybody else is doing back in, and asking my questions, I think I've come to the conclusion I'm not going to make the Entrechat, or at least the adult version. I might still make the kid version because it is an awesome pattern. If you need to knit for a little girl, make the Entrechat. But I'm not going to make it for myself. And I think I'd be better suited to even make another Mae with this blue yarn, or look at other patterns, because then I could have something that would work with those leggings with the blue that I currently don't have anything with. So I just thought that was very interesting, because even with this, all the thinking that I've been doing about this specific topic this week, I still got pulled into that, you know, that whole group mentality, that lemming complex where, you know, as soon as someone does something, you want to do it too. So I just thought that was very interesting. I hope that you found this interesting as well. I'd love to know your thoughts. Like, let me know down below, or even in the Ravelry group, because there will be a post for this episode. You know, if you make garments, let me know what you think. Let me know how you decide what to make, or if this is something that you struggle with too. Like, you know, what do you think you can do, or what do you look for, or, you know, just let me know. Let me know. I find this very interesting, so just let me know. So yeah, the only other thing that I have this week is the collection. And last week the vote was for either the cat selfies or the, what was the other thing? The clouds. It was the clouds. And I honestly thought the clouds were going to cream the cats, because usually the vote, or the fabric that gets the most votes initially, is kind of the one that pulls through to the end. And the first batch of votes was all clouds, 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 clouds. And then the cats pulled in from the rear, and I think they ended up beating the clouds by 1 vote. So I went with the cat selfies, and I have to say, even though the color palette is very neutral and I tend to work more with brights, I'm really pleased. I'm pleased with this collection. And now, unfortunately, I did mention a minute ago that Mr. T was hanging out, and he has located himself right on top of my collection. And it is going to be very sad for me to have to move him, but I will, for the sake of the collection and showing the collection, I will do that. Sorry, Mr. T. So, I know. Poor Boo. Poor Boo. Okay. So, this is how the bag turned out, and there's the little cat, and I was so happy with the accent fabric I found. You can see there's all these little words, and there's Mew, and there's like the kitty, and there's little bones, and little fish, and there are dog words on here too, but I thought it was such a good fit, and I love that I had it in both the black and the cream. I think it goes really well with this fabric. So these are the bags, and I will have 3 of these, and I will have 1 of just my regular pouch size. So that's the bags. He's located himself back on the yarn right after I moved him. What a bugger. Okay. Get out there. Okay. So the other yarns I did were 100 gram skeins, and I did ended up using the sparkle yarn that I mentioned for this collection, and I think it still really works. So these are the 100 gram skeins with the gold sparkle, and these are a mixture of browns and grays, and now he's rubbing. So these are a mixture of browns and grays and creams, and then there's little areas like right there where I did a peachy pink, like for little kitty noses and little kitty toe pads. So there's a peachy pink mixed in there too. But I thought these really turned out quite nice as well. I'm going to call this Calico. And so those are the 100 gram skeins. And then I have 2 sock sets. And again, so there we go. So the mixture of browns and creams and grays. And you can see there's the little bit of peachy pink there for their little noses. So I have 2 sock sets. And then I have 1 sock blank, because I've been dyeing all my yarn for the show. So I have 1 sock blank this week. And here's the sock blank there. And again, browns, creams, grays, and then you can see those little areas of the peachy pink. So yeah, that's the sock blank. And so yeah, I really like that collection. It's way outside my norm, but I still like how it turned out. And you know, there's a lot of people out there who really like neutrals. So there you go, neutrals. So next week's vote. This is going to be a fun one. I'm going to be ordering new fabrics after the show, but I still have some left over from my last order, and I pulled these from that. So your first choice for this week is Mike and Sully. I think this fabric is adorable, and like I've said before, when I pick fabrics, I try and pick ones where the colors are going to make interesting, yarn combinations. So I think the colors in this would be really pretty on yarn. So that's your first choice, Mike and Sully. And then your second choice is the Mystery Machine. I think this is really cute too. And I think these colors would be really cool on yarn, like the turquoise and the green and the lime and the orange and with black accents. I think this would make really cool yarn too. So those are your choices this week, Mike and Sully or Scooby-Doo. So let me know, comments below, and remember, any comments on any video as well as any orders in my shop for that month will get you an entry for a monthly $20 coupon for the shop. So thank you very much for watching this episode, and I hope you enjoyed that it was a little bit more chatty. Next week we will definitely be getting back into the knitting. I will be knitting like crazy next week because I have missed it so much. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you're going to Kawartha, be sure to come find the Bling Your String booth and come say hi. But I will see you next week. I hope you have a great weekend and see you soon.